Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has won the vote of confidence in the parliament, cementing both his position and the integrity of the ruling coalition. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest headlines. A deadly nighttime barrage of drones targets Ukraine. Slovakia vows to block EU sanctions against Russia without energy solutions. And Michał Probierz is to remain head coach of the Polish national football team. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk won Wednesday's vote of confidence in the parliament, thus ending the short period of uncertainty after the defeat of the ruling coalition's presidential candidate, Rafał Trzaskowski. Today's vote also showed the unity of the coalition as all of its members decided to back their leader. This, however, doesn't mean things will stay the same, as Donald Tusk has already announced a government reshuffle. We're going now live to Sonia Agata-Biszczan, who is at the Polish Parliament. Good evening, Sonia. Do we know any details of this reshuffle?
Good evening, Maciej. Well, indeed, there are many developments happening at the Polish Parliament. First of all, I would describe the situation as some things old and some things new. As you mentioned, the government is staying in place. This is something old. Aside from that, we also saw an atmosphere of being divided. This was especially visible during the speech of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, with some people chanting his name and others opposing the things that he was saying. Regarding something new, this is the exact thing that you're mentioning, the government reshuffling. And indeed, we have more information about it coming from the Prime Minister himself, so it's best to hear it from him.
In July, we will announce a new opening following a reshuffle in the cabinet. I'm not talking here about just changing names, but above all about changing the structure of the government. Back in December, when we finally received from the president the opportunity to take the reins of the state, I didn't want to waste a single day or hour, and the people who decided to take responsibility for Poland had to work with very dysfunctional structures that we inherited from the Law and Justice administration.
This moment also called for a debate on the future priorities of the government, with some of the members of the ruling coalition saying that among the biggest priorities should be communicating better the achievements that are already in place by the ruling government. However, even in conversation with other members of the ruling government, they were more direct, more concrete and more critical perhaps, and thought that objectives should extend even beyond self-promotion. So let's hear some of those views.
I think that the most important for the Polish government right now is to rebuild Polish army. We need a strong and a big army which might stop any aggression coming from Russia, and also the clean energy and the cost of life. That's the most important things to do in Poland right now.
First and foremost is housing, homes for citizens, because people simply cannot afford to buy them. Then personal assistance services for people with disabilities. Another key point is the depoliticization of state-owned companies, meaning making them more professional. We also intend to depoliticize public television. We believe state broadcasters should serve the public, not act as a party mouthpiece. Another priority is digital safety for children in primary schools, particularly regarding smartphone use.
And then the opposition was critical generally of the day of the vote and of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Former Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki asserted that Tusk offers nothing but a continuation of mediocrity and a lack of a plan for Poland's development. Tusk called for this vote of confidence himself following the recent Polish presidential election, in which the candidate of the ruling coalition, Rafał Trzaskowski, lost to a candidate of the opposition Conservative Law and Justice Party, Karol Nawrocki. The future remains uncertain, as the Polish president has the power to veto legislation, something that Andrzej Duda, the current Polish president, has resorted to on a number of occasions. And perhaps a similar trajectory could continue with Karol Nawrocki. Back to you.
That was Sonia Agata-Biszczan reporting from the Polish Parliament. Thank you very much. After yet another attack on Ukrainian civilians last night, the ceasefire between Kyiv and Moscow seems unlikely in the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, warned of a looming nuclear annihilation in a social media video. Marek Steele has this report.
Kharkiv, the aftermath of a 9-minute Russian drone attack against Ukraine's second-largest city.
My apartment caught fire. The fire spread quickly. I smelled smoke and went outside. I didn't even have time to grab my documents. No papers, no money.
Vitaly was among the more than 60 people wounded in the attack. 3 people were killed.
There were hits from 17 Shahed drones on 3 apartment buildings. In addition, private residential houses were destroyed. One of the strikes hit an industrial facility. In total, there were 9 strikes.
The overnight attack against Kharkiv and Odessa followed Russia's 2 biggest air assaults of the war on Ukraine this week. Moscow has been bombarding Ukrainian cities as a retaliatory measure for Kyiv's successful attacks against military and energy targets inside Russia. Despite the attacks, Ukraine and Russia continue to exchange prisoners of war as part of a deal made in Istanbul. On Tuesday, the wounded and critically ill returned to their homelands.
These are soldiers from various branches of the armed forces. All of them require serious medical attention, and we will provide full support. We expect the exchanges to continue, and there will be separate announcements regarding this.
The exchanges, which also included a swap of bodies, have so far been one of the only tangible outcomes of the peace talks that are being led by the United States.
Let's just say that there are a lot of obstacles in bilateral relations with the US. We definitely can't hope for any quick results.
Among those advocating for a quick end of the war is US National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, who took to social media platform X to warn against a nuclear holocaust.
Dropped in 1945, 80 years ago.
After a reference to the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Gabbard moves on to today's nuclear threat, seemingly borrowing from the Kremlin's narrative.
We stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before. Political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers.
The southern Ukrainian port city of Odessa hosted the Ukraine South and Eastern Europe Summit on Wednesday, with leaders from Romania, Greece, and Serbia in attendance. This is the first ever visit to Ukraine by Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić, who has been accused of being pro-Russian.
I think it shows that even President Vučić, who tries to be friendly with Russia, who came to May 9 celebrations in Moscow, met with Putin, but he can't ignore the importance of Ukraine, the importance of supporting Ukraine.
The summit took place in Odessa, the same city which just a few hours back saw a Russian overnight drone attack. For TVP World, I'm Marek Steele.
Hours after the European Commission outlined the shape of the 18th sanctions package against Russia, protests rang out through Bratislava and Budapest. But according to the European Commission, dialogue will shift the dial and offer a necessary circuit breaker. More from our EU correspondent Angela Skujins in Brussels.
On Tuesday, top Brussels brass outlined the contours of the proposed 18th sanctions package against Russia for that country's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Now, energy is a key pillar to this proposal, but could also be its undoing. That is because hours after the proposal was laid bare, Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico took to social media to state that he will torpedo these discussions unless a real solution is found to what he claims to be an impending energy crisis. He is referring to the European Commission's proposal from last month that all member states will have to exit Russian energy as of 2027. Now, despite the pushback from Slovakia as well as Hungary in recent months, Dan Jorgensen, the EU's energy commissioner, is confident that dialogue will shift the dial.
I want to, of course, underline that I'm not neglecting the worries of the few countries that are opposing this because they worry about their own populations. I wish that they will change their mind and support us in this ban, but it's possible to both wish for them to change their mind and still acknowledge that they need to take care of their populations, and we will from the European Commission side, of course, help as much as we can solve the problems that in especially 2 member states that can arise on the short term. But it is something that is possible to solve.
Now, this is not the end of this discussion. Member states on Monday will convene in Brussels for an energy council. They've been invited to give the European Commission their feedback regarding this audacious proposal to exit Russian crude oil, gas, as well as nuclear over the next couple of years. But those member states are waiting for a legal proposal to be tabled by the European Commission outlining how they can exit some of these hefty and expensive energy contracts with those large Russian energy giants. So what is clear is that the conversation is not over, but perhaps Slovakia and Hungary are using energy discussions as a smokescreen to block ongoing support for Ukraine. At least critics in the Belgian capital are stating that a fusing needs to occur regarding the EU's priorities. Angela Scoogens from Brussels for TVP World.
Our deal with China is done, said US President Donald Trump after lengthy negotiations with Beijing have brought an end to another chapter of trade tensions between the 2 powers. John Todd reports on what it means for Europe.
Delegates emerge after marathon trade talks between China and the US, hammering out a framework agreement. China's Vice Commerce Minister Li Chenggang said the discussions in Britain will further increase trust between the 2 countries. President Donald Trump provided some details in a post on his Truth Social site.
Any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China. Likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me. We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. Relationship is excellent.
The news was welcomed by the European Commission's chief spokesperson.
Good news on the trade front and on making the trade system work is good news for the world.
The deal also allows the United States to charge a 55% tariff on Chinese goods, while China would impose a 10% tariff on US imports. Experts have sounded a note of caution, though, warning little else is known about the deal and how Donald Trump plans to tackle China's sizable trade surplus, with some scenarios potentially impacting European businesses.
If we have a bigger qualitative deal between the US and China in the future, for Europe, it would also mean that we have to really gear up for the problem or overcapacity only accelerating and becoming a huge issue for European businesses and the single market.
The US-China deal still needs the approval of Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The European Trade Commissioner Mario Šefčovič, meanwhile, is working with his Chinese counterpart to address trade issues ahead of an EU-China summit in July. John Todd for TVP World.
Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, set to become the 2nd Polish astronaut in history, will have to wait a little longer to secure this title, as the launch of the Dragon 9 rocket, which is to carry him to the International Space Station, has been postponed due to a technical failure. Our correspondent Piotr Orłowski reports on the latest from the Axiom 4 space mission camp.
We have to wait a little longer for start of the Axiom 4 mission. After the decision of postponing Tuesday's launch due to the weather, now it is postponed again because of the technical reason. The issue is a leak of the liquid oxygen that requires additional work. It was discovered during the booster tests hours before liftoff scheduled for today morning of Florida time. The exact booster was used with the rocket Falcon 9 once at the end of April, and it had the same issue. Reporting from Kennedy Space Center for TVP World, Piotr Orłowski.
The Polish national football team has lost to Finland in the World Cup qualifiers. On top of that, it has lost its captain and best striker, Robert Lewandowski, due to an ongoing conflict with head coach Michał Probierz. Despite mass criticism the latter faces, the Polish Football Association decided to give him another chance. Piotr Miszczuk reports.
This has been a rainy couple of days for Polish football. First, the national team's most decorated player, Robert Lewandowski, ended his international career after coach Michał Probierz stripped him of captaincy in a shocking decision. Then the team suffered a defeat at the hands of underdog Finland in a crucial qualifiers game, further plunging into chaos.
I think this is the lowest point the Polish national team has been in recent years. I don't think that I can even stray from my mind to recall a moment when it was as bad as it is right now.
Without Lewandowski and without the new captain Inter Milan's Piotr Zieliński, who was absent due to an injury, Poland lost 2-1 to Finland in Helsinki. Poland's stand-in captain Jan Bednarek broadly commented on the defeat.
I think we've been polarized as a society, divided. This is a bad moment for us Poles. Really, what we do here is only play football, but it matters to many. Representing the country is the greatest honor. I think as a nation, as a team, footballers and fans, we should create a supporting community that will help us, the players, succeed.
The affair prompted a reaction from the outgoing Polish president Andrzej Duda.
Are there successors to Robert Lewandowski? Are there young Polish players today who are our rising stars who can give the national team a chance of not losing to Finland? I would very much like that to happen, and that should be the primary concern of the coach today.
And inspired Prime Minister Donald Tusk to draw a parallel between the national football team and the ruling coalition, which has weathered a crisis in the government.
What does a conflict mean in a team that should be driven by one goal, one spirit? We saw yesterday in Helsinki, right? Let's not make this kind of mistake.
Though this football affair made waves way beyond the world of football, head coach Michał Probierz has remained in his role, at least for now. This means 36-year-old Robert Lewandowski might not put on his Poland team kit ever again, as he pledged not to play under Probierz. But experts are more optimistic.
In my opinion, Robert Lewandowski will play for Poland again, even if it will be for one match, a testimonial perhaps, for one final appearance, but he will play in the national team.
Poland now dropped to the third in the World Cup qualifiers group, with second place securing a spot in the playoffs. Next, Poland will come up against the Netherlands and Finland in decisive games in early September. Whether it will be under coach Probierz will hinge on a potential change of heart of the Polish Football Association. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
No surprise in the Polish parliament today as Prime Minister Donald Tusk wins the vote of confidence, thus securing his position as the undisputed leader of the ruling coalition. What follows next? And to discuss it, we're joined by Jovanka Jakubek, La Liga Associate Professor at the University of Warsaw's Faculty of Law and Administration. Good evening.
Good evening.
So it was, in fact, a landslide victory for Donald Tusk today. Do you think there was, a hint of uncertainty ahead of the vote?
Well, there wasn't much uncertainty, I would say, because the expectations was that the vote of confidence would be in favor of the Prime Minister. And I think that all the votes were really diligently counted ahead of the vote, because actually this move posed some risk for the Prime Minister, because should he lose this vote, he would need to offer his resignation, which for sure wasn't his plan for today. So this victory, as you mentioned, is indeed something important also to restore the confidence in the government and to show that the government is still supported by the majority in the parliament.
Yes, to restore the confidence in the government, but what government? Because we know that a major reshuffle awaits Donald Tusk's cabinet. Who will lose their jobs?
Well, the reshuffle is something that the Prime Minister declared, but without giving any details. So we don't really know who is going to lose the ministerial positions. What we know is that there will be fewer ministries, so the number will be limited. and there will be some consolidation of the policy areas of the government. The Polish law, the act for how the Council of Ministers is working, actually gives a lot of flexibility for the Prime Minister. So Prime Minister can construct the government according to his or her needs. It basically works like building from Lego blocks, that he can choose which policy areas to accumulate in one ministry and which to divide. And this is actually within his competence to do that.
Right, but given the popularity of certain ministers of Donald Tusk's government, who can it be? Because we've been hearing about the Minister of Justice, for example.
Well, the Minister of Justice has a very difficult job, I would say. That's one of the most difficult in this government, because for sure he was waiting for the change of power in the presidential palace, which is not happening. So the possibility of supporting his ambitious reforms for restoration of the rule of law is unfortunately not certain, to say the least. So it is up to the Prime Minister to decide whether to leave Mr. Adam Bodnar, who is a very experienced lawyer. He's a professor of law, very respected former ombudsman. Whether to leave him in his office and try to look for some other solutions when it comes to restoration of the rule of law, or maybe to adopt some new strategy with a new face. That's up to the Prime Minister. But when it comes to reshuffling of the government, I think what is important is always this kind of balance of power within the coalition. So the government is currently consisting of 4 political parties, which means that every party would like to have the share of the jobs within the government to be able to support the important policy areas and policy ideas. So whatever decision the Prime Minister is going to take, he will need to take into consideration the wishes of the coalition partners as well.
Therefore, my following question, now that the vote of confidence has been won, do you think it is time for Donald Tusk to discipline his coalition partners? Because we've been hearing a lot of criticism from their part for the past few weeks.
For sure, the disagreements and the discussions between the coalition partners, which were made public, were not very popular among the public, and people were not treating those kind of disagreements, public disagreements, with, let's say, a lot of trust. So indeed, it would be much better if those kind of disagreements or even conflicts were settled within the coalition, and sometimes even behind closed doors. If I could make some recommendations to the government, that would be for sure one of the recommendations. So indeed, the Prime Minister would need to kind of install his authority in the government, and also to pay attention to the communication that is going from the government to the public, because also the kind of challenges of communication were one of the reasons for criticism that the government was getting in recent weeks and months.
So what awaits this old-new government? As Donald Tusk has already stated, he is prepared for a difficult cohabitation with the new president.
Well, I think that his speech today, however, he's a very good speaker and very experienced, but it was still lacking some details about his vision, what exactly he wants to achieve for the remaining 2.5 years of the government. So what we still wait for is a declaration of this vision, of the mission of the government, of the most important objectives. And this is also what he declared that he's going to announce in July. So we still need to wait probably to really hear those details from his side. However, this needs to be really precise, and I think that a lot of people who voted for the coalition parties in 2023 and currently also voted for Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski are expecting the government to really restore the hope, to give some really strong message to the people that they are going to fulfill the expectations, that they are also going to deliver the results that are expected.
That's what the government is declaring now. But can the government work effectively in Polish semi-presidential system, having a stronger position in the presidential palace?
Well, we don't really have a semi-presidential system. The president has only, let's say, blocking powers and also the possibility to propose his own legislative proposals. But he's not the governing, let's say, party in the Polish political system. However, indeed, the cohabitation is going to be challenging for sure, because the government and the president are from different political parties and are very much in conflict. So the government would need to look for possibilities to cooperate with the president, especially on this kind of policy ideas that would be widely supported by the general public. So if people would be in favor of specific acts of law or specific policy initiatives, the president would also need to be more careful in trying to oppose those kind of initiatives, because he's newly elected and he also will be in need for gathering political support behind him.
Right, so as you mentioned a while ago, Donald Tusk has already pledged to accelerate the work of the government and of the ruling coalition as well, in order to deliver on the election promises, right? Now that the holiday season begins, do you think it will be a busy summer for Polish lawmakers?
It should be a busy summer for the Polish lawmakers, because a lot of criticism for the government was made on the presumption that the government is not actually fulfilling the expectations. So indeed, they need to prove that they are really working hard to deliver those promises, and especially now when it's going to be even more challenging for them to deliver those promises. So they need to be much more creative in looking for some new ways of achieving the consensus with the newly elected president. Maybe not all of the acts of parliament will be signed by the president. So again, there will be a need to look for some other opportunities and possibilities to act for the government.
Well, then, on the other hand, coalition leaders claim they work a lot, but they also claim that the best part of their work goes unnoticed due to some failures in public communication. So, should we interpret this as the major factor to explain rather low public support for Donald Tusk? According to the latest survey, 35% of Poles support him, while 58 do not. Well, 35 trust him, while 58 do not trust him.
Indeed, problems with communications were one of the biggest sources of criticism to the government. And currently, Prime Minister decided to invest in a spokesperson for the government. But we still don't know who is going to take this role, and this role is not going to be an easy task, for sure. But also what needs to happen is totally reformulating how the government is communicating with the people. Much more investment in social media, in direct communication with the people. Also with NGOs and so on. So this is something that the government really needs to invest if they want to keep the support and gather more support, because as you also mentioned, the support for the government currently is not at the highest.
And that would be the full stop here. Jovanka Jakubek-Lalig, Associate Professor at the University of Warsaw's Faculty of Law and Administration, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, coming up next, we have On the Record with Alina Poliakova, President and CEO of Center for European Policy Analysis, who will talk to our news director, Adam Yasser, about the US-Europe relations and whether they are really as bad as we are sometimes made to believe. And that would be all for now. Thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.